Over the years, I've been observing what type of, let's say, activities or initiatives by Christians or churches, analyzing which ones are the most effective. Um, that being said, this video is more so for um, my friends who are involved in the mission in Japan, in telling people about Jesus. So if that's you, stick around. And I have some pretty interesting things to say, at least for myself. I'm very interested in these things. And that is, I think I'm starting to see some common patterns in understanding what could really work in Japan. I want to hear your thoughts and potentially even try this out. So it's basically a framework of um, of approaches in doing evangelism work, or in other words, ways where we can empower the Japanese Christians to tell people about Jesus, to tell their friends, families, neighbors, without extra friction. I want you to understand that I've been living in Japan for almost 13 years, and I've been a part of the forefront of missions. I've done and experienced doing street outreach, street live, street English. We've done international parties and community building, gaming, language exchange, university outreach, and all different ways to cultivate the evangelism work of the church. And it's worked. But at the same time, doing the same thing is not sustainable, because obviously Japan as a society is also changing, and a lot of these things are not as fun as before now. And that's why, as the church takes on this mission of telling people about Jesus, we need to understand what really works and what doesn't. So anyway, going to my point, there's a framework that I've been observing mainly from Christian communities that are thriving. And the more I observe, the more I analyze, I see a lot of these things in line with what Jesus did when he was telling people about God, about the kingdom of heaven. And the first one is this. First of all, in Japan, if we're not offering any value, people are not going to be interested. We're going to end up chasing after people and telling them about Jesus, which in turn becomes kind of like a religious indoctrination. And I know if it's coming from a good heart and we have good intentions. I'm not here to kind of discredit that, but what I'm trying to say is Jesus provided value to people. He healed the sick. He made the blind see. He made the crippled walk. And he set people free from spiritual and demonic oppression. And he fed the hungry. People are obviously seeing the value in what Jesus was providing. And that's why hundreds and thousands of people want to come to Jesus. So Jesus saw the need of the people, and not just the need, the immediate need of the people, the felt needs. That's number one. As Christians, as the church, as missionaries, we need to understand what people are actually needing right now in Japan. As for missionaries coming from abroad or a global, whatchamacallit, let's say, for example, if you're a missionary and you've been involved in different mission trips across different countries, particularly in third world countries like to be Africa or South America or in Asia. And a lot of these countries' immediate felt needs are monetary, or it could be healthcare or food or clothing or anything to do with physical help, physical help. And once you provide these physical help to them, they become open to the gospel. They become more receptive and open to hearing what you have to say. Now, apply this to Japan, it doesn't work. And the reason is Japanese people, they're already provided for their needs. They're educated, they're well off financially. I mean, most of the people, generally speaking. And they're not necessarily hungry for, for food. They can afford their own food. And they're also very disciplined people. They don't have any need for any good moral teachings. But there's one thing that we're missing out. What are the Japanese people's needs? What are people hungry for? And understanding that is the key. Now, I'm not here to answer that question, but what I could see is that in Japan, there are people who are searching for relationships, for friendships, for places where they can share their lives with. And so, whether we admit it or not, my point is, whether we admit it or not, we are not made to be alone. And I think that's one of the needs of the Japanese people is to find a community, to find real, genuine relationship. And how can we fill that void? That's something that you need to answer for yourself. And that's something that your ministry or your church or organization needs to understand. That's one. So going back to what Jesus did, he provided value to the people. That's why people are coming to him instead of the other way around. But of course, when you're groundbreaking, you will have to go there and go to the people, just like what Jesus did as well, right? Like when he visited different towns, he would go to them first. And then once he made his statement and he showed them what he can provide, the value that he can give, people starts to come to him. And, that's a case that I observed is doing this very thing. They're providing value to other people. And some examples I could think of at the top of my head is one group that we work together with in Shonan called Wave of Grace. What they do is they teach free surfing right at the beach. They're there twice a week and they don't have any motive of asking people for money or whatever donation, but they're just there to serve people with one single purpose: to provide value, teach surfing, give out free drinks, or provide a shade for the surfers when the weather is really hot, and just a sense of community. Now that's the first one, providing value. The second thing is also very, very important, which I also noticed what Jesus did. When Jesus started to grow his ministry, he formed a community around him, the 12 disciples. So it wasn't just Jesus the whole time. It came to the point where Jesus was doing it with his friends, with the ones he loved and the people that he did life together with. And that is something that we're missing. Oftentimes, the ministry that does evangelism work or churches run on one person, the pastor or that organization's leader. It's all centered around that person. But we can't function like that. Jesus didn't function like that. If you think about the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus fed the 5,000, yes, Jesus performed the miracle, but he didn't do it by himself. It was the disciples that distributed the food. And because of that, people saw the community around Jesus and they wanted to be a part of that. They want to join in. And, you know, we're not Jesus, we're part of his disciples. And we are not the one doing the miracle. We're just the ones bringing the people in to this community. So the second point that I want to make, and the second observation within this framework, is that our ministry work, it needs to be done in a community. It can't just be yourself. Maybe at first you need to step out of your comfort zone and start talking to people and approach someone who might want to do the same thing, but eventually it has to be done in a community. If you're a church, it needs to be done through your church. And how do you do that? Well, practically speaking, I think here's the deal, okay? Let me step back a little bit. In Japan, when we think about evangelism or outreach, the moment people here, including myself, how I perceive outreach, whenever I hear about that word evangelism, I instantly think about going out in the streets with the mic and telling people repent and believe in Jesus. That is not for everybody. Although it works, people get saved through that. It's amazing. But that doesn't work with everybody, especially Japanese people, where they don't want to disrupt peace. It's in their culture. It's built in them from the moment they start going to school. They just want to live in harmony with everybody. And going out on the streets, although it's amazing, I really commend the people that do it and do it well with passion and boldness. It's not gonna be picked up by the churches in Japan. I'm just being real and, being honest. At least maybe this is just my opinion. I could be wrong, but at least this is based on my observation. So what you want to do is this: to get the church or to get your team on board, to join your initiative, to evangelize, to tell people about Jesus. We need we need to identify that a thing that we are already good at. I believe that each church, each Christian ministries have been gifted something special, something unique to them. And again, an example like Wave of Grace, that's their gift is, surfing, doing ministry at the beach. And another group I can think of is one of the groups in Nara, in in Kansai region, the Gaya Kazoku Port Church, and they're very good at helping young Japanese parents navigate through parenting. And they do that as a way to create this community that attract people who don't know Jesus. And through that, they can share the gospel. And that is done through a community. It's not just by the leaders, but it's by a community. So we are seeing this pattern of a group of believers doing the mission together that's centered on something. Jesus does the one that does the miracle, but centered on something that they're gifted with. Again, something that they can provide value with. So these are the two things that I want to share with you today. I still have two more that I believe are so crucial, but I think the video is about to run out of memory, so I have to pause for now. But I get excited about this. I get excited thinking about ways how we can tell people about Jesus. And if this resonates with you and you want to hear more, let's talk, let's chat. And yeah, I believe God is doing something special in Japan right now as we speak. I was just chatting with some people from the States earlier, and they've been saying they want to come to Japan and do some missions. And it's It's gonna be great. I'm really excited. I'll see you guys in the next video.